Hey, everybody. We have an amazing episode today. We have our special guest on the New American Media podcast, Miss Nila Patel. She is a mother, a hotelier, a loan broker extraordinaire, and she's been doing this for a long time, entrepreneur. And I'm very excited to have her on the pod today. So, without further ado, here we are. Nila, so nice to see you again. Excited to have you on the pod. Um, Wanted to kind of start here and talk a little bit about your background. Your background's very similar in the sense that you are Surthi Patel, like my wife, Mona, and we know a lot of the same people. Tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you kind of grew up.
Sure. My story is very similar to many, Gujaratis with the last name Patel. We migrated here from England. My parents went to England back in the 60s. I was about 12 years old. We moved to Missouri back in 81. It's been a while, of course. And it was a great experience being raised in England as well as um, America. But the difference was in England, I was around a lot of diversity, while when we moved to Missouri, it was not the same. Although we my
That's
dad.
definitely an understatement, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know if how many kids my age experienced this, but I was 12 years old, and my brother and I, who's a year older than me, we had to stay at one of our uncle's home, who was so I am so thankful to this day for my uncle who took us in for about a year with his two kids. And everybody was kind of trying to get to that dream of being successful in the hotel industry, although we really didn't know what we were doing back then. We were just working, grinding. And the experience of living with my uncle for about a year while my parents went from state to state looking for a motel that they could afford, even though, they were going to borrow money from uncles and friends. And, they just wanted that right place. And after about 11 months, they found it in Missouri, a little 11-room motel. And my brother and I, by then, had been already at two different schools. Now we were going to be at our third school. And we thought nothing of it. Everybody did this. And it was an experience living with another family, helping them in the motel. I learned how to do the switchboard, where you pick up the switch and you plug it in and you transfer calls. I don't know, Greg, if you know about that. But yeah, so that's where I started. We worked every weekend. My parents' English was a little bit broken. They spoke pretty decent. They just didn't have the confidence. And 12, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, we're renting rooms and cleaning, cleaning on the weekend, with just about doing it all, shoveling snow. And we just thought
Oh,
nothing
that's
of it.
amazing. Back then, your parents didn't have CoStar, LoopNet, or a bunch of commercial real estate brokers out there that you could go to acquire a hotel, right? That they went around from state to state to find a hotel is amazing. Um,
Yeah.
Tell me kind of that journey. So were you born in the UK or
Yes, I was born in Luton, England. I was, there till about 11 and a half, close to 12. Then we came to the States, little Indian girl in Missouri with a British accent, although I lost that pretty quickly.
yeah,
Although I have to say my experience in England was, it was wonderful. I mean, it was very different than my school experience as a child. or a teenager here. There we walked to school. We felt safe. We had other kids as we walked along the alleys. Other kids would join us. Like I said earlier, a lot of diversity, which felt very home. But at the time that I was in England, we had the skinheads who were rioting against, a lot of the Pakistanis, and we were also thought of as the same,
Right, they didn't know the difference. That was kind of where I was getting at
yeah,
is, why would your parents leave the UK to
yeah,
come to America is because, as we've seen with most of Europe, it's really anti, entrepreneurship, right? With
yeah,
all the laws and the inability to start businesses, they make it extremely difficult. And
and
so
and I do remember, my parents were gonna buy a corner shop, which was very, common after your parents work in factories, they save some money, they buy that little corner shop, which was the dream when you were in England at the time. But there were so many riots going on, and I remember at night sleeping in my parents' room, we just didn't know, who would throw a little, bomb through the mailbox, and in England, the homes have doors, and the mail is, a little push. You just push the mail through and it lands on your
right,
floor. And it's as I look back, it was very scary, although I didn't feel scared at the time because you're a kid, you're playful, you have your parents, but we weren't allowed on the streets to roller skate and do the things we did. So my parents made a decision of coming here, not knowing really anything about the industry, as far as hospitality, but we knew everybody else was in it, and
right.
we're
You had
we're
friends and family in it.
yeah, and we were gonna do what they were doing, and it was working.
Exactly.
And, it was, a little different. I'd get on the bus and in Missouri, and the bus would pick us up from a motel. The kids would ask, "How come you live in a motel?" And at the time, I would say, my I would never say my dad owned it, and not sure if that was something I was proud of or I wasn't. You just didn't know what to say. You're just trying to
Right.
be a kid and you fit in, and we didn't really play sports, and we didn't go to prom or homecoming or anything. And it's I always say things happen for us, not to us. So it's if you always think that way in life, um then it really helps you understand why we experience what we do.
100%. No, I love that. So now you are that 12-year-old girl and you're growing up in Missouri,
Yeah.
um, making rooms, helping clean up. When was it really where you felt like, "I want to be an entrepreneur when I grow up. That's kind of my goal." Because I will tell you, most of our parents, especially Gujarati parents or Indian parents, immigrant parents in general, are like, "Hey," they want us to be doctors, lawyers, engineers, and those kinds of things, right? So I'm sure your parents pushed you in that direction. What kind of, changed your mind?
Well, I felt even as a teenager, I was kind of a natural at it. And the guests didn't always know I was only 16 years old. Um, so when I'm negotiating rates, trying to change a, 4-day stay to a 7-day stay and negotiating rates and that, I mean, I did not realize I was doing that, but I was. And I felt it was easy. And looking back, why do we want something that's easy? Well, it works. And I do revisit my self as a as in my 20s versus my teenager. Teenager, we were just moving along, doing what we're supposed to. Mom saying, "Get in the kitchen, learn how to cook all these foods," and that was great. Today, I can cook a lot. Do I think that that was necessary? It wasn't for my child. When I raised a girl, and I didn't feel it was necessary to teach her how to cook. Was it necessary for my mom? Yes. So as we as we go through the generations, um, we have to adapt, and we have to say what is going to work for our kids today. I mean, my daughter's 29. She's actually not a kid anymore. And my son is 26. And I think due to the experience I had and I embraced it, I was able to raise my kids exactly how I wanted to.
No, that's amazing. And that's where kind of you got married, I'm guessing fairly early, have raised the kids, and you saw all of this, hotel business around you. What kind of precipitated you moving into the actual management of the hotels, even while you were raising the kids? Was it just your knowledge, or was it something you learned in college, or just your innate abilities?
So I actually ended up starting at a community school, community college, and then it was time for me to uh, get married. My marriage was arranged, and I was 19 years old. By the time I was 20, I moved to Ohio. So my father-in-law also had a motel. My husband at the time was working at Sears as a mechanic, and it made sense because I watched my mom do it. I watched her take care of us, spend time with us, and run a business at the level that she was able to run it. Obviously, we don't run 11 room, motels anymore. I was able to take it to the next level in the sense that I found it more important to give my children my guidance, my time, and be able to work in the hotel and put the food on the table that was home cooked, not picking up fast food. And I had them in, activities. It was doable, and I watched it, and I watched others do it. We're a community, right, of Patels or whatever Gujaratis. Well, we all get together, and we should always surround ourselves with people we want to be like. And that was important for me. I wanted to hear their success stories. And we were succeeding. I was able to spend time with my kids in the evening with their homework. And the only part was we did live in a motel, even for my children, until my daughter was about 12 or 13. We finally bought a house. Until then, they also were raised in a motel. And there was nothing wrong with that. You
Right.
know, we
Well, used to, right? I
yeah.
remember after school going straight to the gas station, right? I would do my homework in the back and all that. I've been able to run a cash register since I was like 8 years old.
Yes, and, it's not for everyone, but it works. It worked for us over some generations, right? Now, neither of my children are in the hotel business. They've worked in it, they know it, they understand it. They just chose a different path, and it's I do see a whole new generation of my kids' age, kids that are coming back into the industry at a management level, and it gives me goosebumps to see how they work. It's it's amazing. They're just taking it to a whole new level. They have a different platform that they're working from, and they're creating new processes, new procedures. I would have loved those back in the 20s when I was, in the industry. I remember we built a Super 8 motel with some partners. One of them was, family, which I'm very grateful he gave us that opportunity. My husband at the time, his cousin, and we opened a brand new little 60-room motel when my daughter was only 1 month old.
Oh,
So
wow.
I, and we moved to another state while she was a month old, and I thought, how am I going to do this? I've always been the front office face of, the business. I love customers. I love the whole customer service. I'm a people person. And I thought, okay, we're going to have to balance this. Um, but now it was just my husband and my daughter, Dulcie. We can do this. And I don't want to sound bad when I say this, but I didn't have in-laws. to worry about. They stayed where they were at. I didn't have to cook for them or clean and all that. I was able to focus on the business and my child.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
that's
it was
very different, that like a lot of women at that time had their in-laws living with them. Like I remember my grandparents lived with us the whole time, right?
it
But it's
at
not like my parents live with me today.
okay. It and I would say there's challenges for a woman like me. I will say this today. Um, because I had goals, I had dreams. I knew what level, I had a blueprint I was creating at the time. And I wanted to continue that and be a mother and be a wife. Unfortunately, having in-laws just kind of would set me back. I would do a great job, but I wouldn't create that blueprint I was looking for, because I realized I was good at what I was doing. And there were times where the hotel was sold out and guests were checking in, and my daughter was in the back, and I'd bring her to the front, and the guests, they would say, "Can we hold her while you check us in?" And I said, "Sure." I was never embarrassed to have family at the desk. If I had to do it, I would do it with pride. And guests love that. It's although I ran into some challenges. My in-laws moved in about 8 months later, and I understand why. It was difficult for them to live alone. They wanted to
Mhm.
be with us. But we lived in the hotel. We built an apartment there. It was small. I had staffing issues, and I was, always the one that was covering desk. You have to provide, you want to cook, and you want to be the daughter-in-law. You want to be the best at everything. And I think that's the person I go back to now is how can I try to not be the best at everything and be great at just a few things.
Right, right.
Mm.
Tell
Yeah.
me, like, having that adversity and all of that, like, how you overcame it and how it built you into the woman you are today, you know?
I began just focusing. I created some walls, 2 walls, and I knew what was going on the side, but my goal was, how can I get my kids to a to the next level? And while they were, growing up, I made sure their education was exactly where they should be, not where I wanted it to be,
Right,
So
right.
they we I made sure that, they were in some sports. My daughter's a dancer. I've danced all my life. That there was there was a variety of things that they could do. My son played golf in high school. I was all over the place. But along the way, I did lose myself. And that was okay. During my late 30s, most of my 40s, I allowed myself to be lost. And that was okay. At the time, I didn't think it was okay, but now that I look back at it, it was okay. I knew that in my 50s, I had the opportunity to find myself. Last year, I did go through a divorce after being married for 31 years. And it was a healthy decision for both of us. My daughter had got my daughter also got married the same year that my divorce was finalized. We were able
Wow.
to have we were able to
That's
have
crazy, right? Before we go into that, how did that whole situation, I know we spoke about it briefly offline. Talk a little bit, however much you want, about that whole situation, right? You're going through the divorce and you're planning your daughter's wedding, right? And how she took it, your son, and the family and whatnot.
Sure. my son, who at the time was 25, um, he he felt the right decision was, that, you know, it was about time. My ex-husband and I had struggled for quite some time, um, and like, most marriages in the Surti, community, and I don't do not wanna speak for anybody, I'm just making a general comment by all means.
Right.
We stay married due to, kids, family, what will everybody think, "Oh, I'm 54, what am I gonna do?" So, there were different reasons. My son explained, "Mom, I watched you over all these years sacrifice yourself, and I finally need you to um, become who you really are, and your kids see through you, and you don't understand. You don't really always see the way your children look at you. You just think they're children. Well, they've known you since they were born, right? So he saw through me, and he said, "You're just not yourself. Um, do this divorce. I will stand by you. We got this." And yes, he is a mama's boy, but he's not. So I raised a strong boy there. And I said, "I can't do this to your sister. She is getting married in a year. What are we going to do?" And he said, "We will get through this together." We spoke to my daughter, we spoke to my family, and my mom said, "I don't think, let's do this after you get married." I said, "Mom, we always do this. There's always a reason. Let's just wait. Let's wait. How about I get my daughter, your granddaughter, married with the purest heart possible?" And Greg, I kid you not, that was the only thought I had. And let that thought grow stronger and stronger. I'm going to get her married with the purest of heart. And my husband and I are going to do every ceremony together. At the time, he may have not felt that's what was going to happen. And I understand. But I made sure it was beautiful. The wedding could not have gone any smoother. We did all the ceremonies together. And the only person that mattered to me during the wedding was my daughter and her future husband and the blessings, from the priest. My son was very proud of me. It's interesting when you think you raise kids to think, well, I always just want to be proud of my son and daughter. But the moment when they're proud of you,
Right.
that's big.
Yeah, no, that's amazing.
That's big.
That must
And
have been a very heartfelt moment, you know?
it was, and I've not looked back since. We, you know, were the reason I had to leave the hotel industry is I think I needed closure. I'm not completely out of the industry. I work on the finance side. Most of my clients are people I've met over the past 30 years that are in the hotel business. And, how can I help them on the other side? There's several sides of the hotel industry, right? Finance,
100%.
operations, supplies. I mean, whether you're a vendor, there's so many sides. And I love it. I
No,
love it.
that's great. Tell me how you ended up going into the finance side, helping, um, you know, what I call new Americans gain access to capital. That was really one of the big reasons why I also got into banking
Okay.
a decade ago because I felt that especially my parents and the folks of that generation never had access to capital. Today, there are a lot more people of color that work in the banking industry that are in commercial lending, especially in SBA. When I started 10 years ago, and even until very recently, I've always been the only banker who is a person of color. You know, I've never been at a bank where there's been another Indian or African American banker other than myself or Asian banker, right? And that's because we're in the South, or in your case, being in Ohio in the Midwest, right?
Mhm.
Obviously, see it in the Northeast and California more, and definitely in Texas and Florida too. But around here, you don't see it. And I'm guessing that's probably some of the reason. But tell us a little bit more about you getting into loan brokerage at 513 Capital and about that.
Sure. During COVID, a lot of the hotels that had a CMBS loan, they we struggled. We obviously did not read the 600-page loan documents, right?
Yeah. Nobody
Um,
reads this.
so correct page 559. Okay, so in one of my hotels that was here was it's still there, located across from a huge Air Force base. Well, government travel went from a lot of travel to almost none.
Zero. Yeah.
Everybody started working from home. Trump, cut off all DoD travel, which it all made sense. So I went from 75% occupancy in mid March to by end of April, I was down to 20% occupancy. Well, one of the things
Still
was,
gotta make your loan payments, right? Your utility payments, all the fixed
well,
costs, property taxes.
we were able to make our loan payments. But this loan that we had with the CMBS, loan, of course, you were not able to go below a certain percentage in your in your occupancy. No matter how much we fought there was no way of getting out of that. Well, they went ahead and assigned the hotel to a servicer. Um, they seized our accounts, and we had to hire a lawyer. Actually, we ended up hiring two lawyers, and during the process, we almost lost our hotel. That was, most hotels were um, doing the same kind of occupancy. Even though we were paying our mortgage, they still were able to take our hotel. Well, we hired this really good, strong lawyer out of Atlanta, and I'd have to give credit to my ex-husband who handled a lot of this while I handled, the operation side. In case he's listening, a shout out to him. Um, and and that's when he met 51 my boss Dan Redlinger. He's based out of Cincinnati. He owns 513 Capital, and they got together. We About a year later is how long it took. He got us out of the CMBS loan into SBA 7A. It wasn't ideal at the time if we were to think about it, but it's what got us out. And I say this to anybody that there are different loans out there, but you have to find out what is the fit for you. That was a perfect fit for us. It saved our hotel, and I began understanding what the different loans that are out there. I reached out to Dan. I met him for lunch several times, and I said, what? I didn't understand anything. I didn't even know what CMBS was. Um, and it allowed me for the first time to say, Nila, it's time you learn something else. Operations is great, but COVID, I don't look back at COVID and think, oh my God, it was awful. We could have something else that could happen to us, is what that taught me. Are we
Right.
going to be,
And always being prepared.
are we going to be prepared? What can we do? So once we met, and then we decide, I spoke to him about, could I join the team? I did think that I was going to have a divorce one day. So for about a year and a half, I ran my hotel, um, and I worked for Dan, and I learned, the finance side of it. And after my divorce, we sold that hotel. Um, and I now work for him full time. And my goal is, obviously, we all want to make money. we have to survive, right? But
Yeah,
I do want to help. I have a client currently, I could give you an example. He runs an independent 40-room motel. Now, would he ever be able to get an SBA loan on his own? No. He's owner finance. How do you build credit when you're owner finance? You don't. And, it worked for him at the time when he was buying the hotel. Now, I'm working with him. We're gonna, I was able to get a term sheet for his property, and he's going to be able to renovate his entire 40-room property. And every time he calls me, the conversations in our language in Gujarati, and feel I feel powerful. I feel I can help him. And I just helped another client. We closed on the hotel, and we are saving him over $10,000 a month. I say this, Greg. Now things have changed. Even the banks, they know who we are. They
exactly. Where
they
I mean, Indian culture today is mainstream media, right? Bollywood culture today is mainstream media, which is
Bollywood.
amazing because, like, we grew up just to segue here, like, same thing like you said, we would hide our culture and hide who we were.
Yes.
Growing up in a small town in the South in North Carolina, you in Missouri, like, you remember for me in the '90s, for you in the '80s, um, you didn't talk about who you were, like, the closest thing was they called me Apu from the Quickie Mart from The Simpsons because my parents owned gas station, right? And that was
It's
it.
it's uh, the kids, my kids' generation, they're very blessed. And I tell them, that today I'm so proud to be an Indian. Not that we weren't proud then. We were just getting by. We were
Yeah.
just trying to survive. Today, we're not surviving. We're creating. We're creating new platforms, new, just I don't know. I'm just so excited. I get so excited. So when I had a recent conversation with a bank. So when I called the banks to see if the client I currently have, if we're going to be a fit for them, if they can refinance the property, I always share that I come from the industry. I did this for 30 years. I get that you guys, you know, may not want to, have an appetite for hotels because a lot of the banks will say, well, we got burned during COVID. Yes, you did. But how can we make this how can we make the change? I always think that how can we show the banks that we're we are no longer, we've changed the way we run our businesses, where we've got management companies that come in, where we've got this new generation taking over. Because we have to move with the times. AI is taking over. So, the mom and pop motels, they did well, but we've got to change.
No, I mean, there's a definitely a stigma around it. Most banks, as being a lender for the last decade now, like, even at where I'm at today, they have no conventional hotel loans in their portfolio. They have
Mhm.
over $1 billion in CRE. It's a $5 billion credit union, and they do not have a single hotel in the portfolio. And this is just because they think it's a risky asset. And
Mhm.
I've said it, in meetings before and in the past, I don't think it is. But that is where the SBA, over 50% of all loans in the SBA are done to hotels. And
That's
the
awesome.
hotels have a default rate less than 1.5% in the SBA. Yet there are banks that will not do it. I mean, I don't want to say they're racist, but to a certain extent, they know because 70% of hotel owners are Asian and Indian mostly, a lot of these banks do not want to do these loans, you know? And I think that is changing now.
Mhm.
And when I got into it a decade ago, it was like that. And this is only 2015. It's finally changing now after COVID. Um, and those relationships are being built. But there are a lot of banks that there's a lot of what I will call older white men that work in credit at these institutions
Mhm.
that do not like gas stations, do not like hotels because of the '08 financial crisis or the stigma around them, right? And these are some of the assets that rarely default. And you know what I've told my credit officer in the past? I've even said, this guy's Gujarati. He will not eat before he doesn't pay his note. I know the person, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, this is how I felt. And it's something very near and dear to my heart. And that's why I really wanted you on, because I feel that you have gotten into this the exact same way because it's near and dear to you. You have seen the lack of access to capital for our people, right? For South Asians, Gujaratis, all of us. And I really, really appreciate what you're doing and your time at 513 Capital. Tell us more about that and kind of what kind of deals you've seen and where you've been able to help them.
So there are a lot of clients that they they were able to get these SBA loans. So especially pre-COVID, um, and they did struggle during the time of COVID to make those payments. The interest rate is so high, Greg, right? Um, you're looking at 10.5%. Now, the way our economy has been, it's well, there's a lot of uncertainty. Are they able to make those payments? What we're seeing today on P&Ls, the bottom line is getting smaller and smaller.
Correct.
And insurance, is another line that's just tripled. In fact, hotel insurance.
That's one thing I'd love to, put out there. Anybody watching this can create a specialty insurance for hotels, gas stations, anything like that, which are specialty assets for CRE. I think there's a huge amount of money to be made
There-
because there's rarely ever any calls on the insurance for a majority of hotel owners. And it's usually acts of God, right? Which is going to affect a home. Same
Mhm.
way it's a tornado, it's a hurricane, it's sleet, hail, those kinds of things. But that's going to affect all markets, right? And that's due to climate change.
And this is what maybe we're a little bit we're not there yet with insurance. And I feel still with the SBA loans, how do we get them into a conventional loan now? If the property is showing some sort of profit, it's showing that they're doing, the owner has a good management style and their other properties are doing well. How do we get them out of this SBA loan? The SBA was great at the time, but now we need to go for them to be profitable. How can we get them into a 7.5% interest rate? And that is where we're at now. I've got different clients that we're working with, and I think you when you reach out to a bank, um, obviously they have their you know, I say my last name, Patel. I come out and say it from beginning. And I would explain to them that, yes, you've had some bad experience. I understand. How can I make my story compelling?
But I mean,
We
that's the job of the bank, though. They're supposed to quantify risk. You're going to have loan losses, right? Like, what
Yeah.
blows my mind today is that we do these $4 and $5 million airballs with no collateral for a plumbing business or like this marketing company, whatever it is, right? All of these crazy business acquisitions, yet we're doing a fully collateralized gas station, liquor store, laundromat, or hotel exterior corridor. All I hear from the credit folks is, "Oh, their Google reviews are bad." Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a freaking Hilton or Marriott, right? It's a Super 8, or it's a Red
Yes.
Roof Inn, or a Quality Inn. I do a ton of Quality Inns, you know? And it's extremely frustrating, as you can see me on the end as a banker.
Yes.
And, this is why I think, I know friends, we both have a mutual friend in Sandesh Patel. He runs the banking, commercial banking for State Bank of Texas. It's the oldest Indian-owned bank in the United States. I think it was started in 1987.
Mhm.
Um, and that's what we need a lot more of, and we need a lot more of people of color, I think, and, South Asian, that are in those positions, those C-suite positions at larger banks, that can change the stigma around these assets.
Absolutely. If we want change, we have to be the change. I've always thought that way. And I do understand if a Mr. Patel with broken English walks into a bank today, maybe 20 years ago it was different, but today, no one's going to listen to him. Is that fair? Of course it's not fair. But we could turn blue trying to say things aren't fair. But what
Right.
can you do about it? And this is how I find my clients. Let me represent you.
And
And
it's
I
not just us, right? It's also Hispanic Americans. They have, like,
Mhm.
these great landscaping businesses, um, Mexican restaurants. Like, you talk to them, it's a very similar way that we grew up. They grew up in the restaurant business, right? I talked to a bunch of my friends that are Punjabi, that their families own the only Indian restaurant in that town for 20 years, right? And that's where they grew up, is in the kitchen,
Mhm.
in the back, and those kinds of things. And so I think this is a minority majority country soon, right? And yet the banking institution, at least in the South, I've seen, and what I would call it community banks, your good old boy banks, it's 90 to 95% white and men. And I think that has to change. I think it will over a matter of time. And you are doing your best to help change it, one loan at a time.
Well, would have never thought that 10 years ago. There's I say this to a lot of women in my community in any state, that if you're not happy with what you're doing, make a change. Change your career. I started teaching Zumba 10 years ago, and that's for fun, obviously. I had to add that in. So it is.
No, that's amazing. You're a
So
fitness instructor. Tell us a little bit
I
about that.
Yeah, and I took Zumba for years, and one day one of the instructors said, "Nila, why don't you bring Zumba to this place, to the studio, but bring your Bollywood?" And I said, "Wait, what?" So every time she did a song that was Bollywood, in her class, and I would take her class, I would just go wild and all this energy, and everybody else had energy, and I thought, "Wait, what?" So then 10 years ago, I got certified in Zumba, and I've been teaching. I teach about 7 classes a month. And, you know, I say this to anybody. I did have a very hard marriage. And I'm not saying any more details in the sense that it was hard, but I never fell off my fitness wagon. I stayed on my fitness path. I always worked out, typically 5 days a week. I've taught Zumba for 10 years. I've realized that this Indian world I was in, it can suck you up, and it can actually not allow you to diversify your thoughts. Um we live in a country where there's a lot of diversity, right? So how can we be the change? Well, we need to surround ourselves every so often with, other people. When I'm at the YMCA where I teach Zumba, I meet different cultures, different careers, and, women that have gone through changes or even men, whatever. But it is my happy place. I teach Zumba tomorrow. I may have about 50 to 60 people in that class.
Wow.
I bring Bollywood, about 3 to 5 songs every class. Right now, I'm teaching the Ed Sheeran song that, he does with, the Punjabi singer, and
Yes.
it's I today versus the girl that was in the '80s in Missouri, um, we're very different. Today, I am so proud to be an Indian. And I have people who will ask me at the end of class, "Hey, can you show me what song that was? Was that one Indian song you did?" They look it up and they start listening to it in their car. And let's be proud of who we are. Let's be proud of how far we've gotten. We own over 64% of the hotels in this country. I'm also very active with AHOA. I'm the ambassador for my region. I'm also on the women's committee.
Nice.
Um, and I go to DC at least twice a year to advocate a lot of the hotel policies, which, by the way, these policies help all hotel owners in this country. So, we're trying to take the $5 million SBA allowance to 10 million. I've been advocating that for the last
Oh, 100%. I've been
five.
saying that since I got into the industry 10 plus years ago,
Well,
right?
I will invite you. You join us to our next DC trip. I have one coming up in September with AHOA. And it's, join organizations, be proud of who you are, and let's be the change. If our lending industry needs more brown to, create the change, more Indians, let's do it.
No,
It's
100%. That's one of the big things that we're doing now is I as I transition out of banking and finance and move towards what we're doing in real estate development, we're focusing a lot on multifamily.
okay.
So that is a huge avenue I think South Asians have not gotten into.
They haven't.
And getting into multifamily, I think industrial or retail, there's self storage. I see a couple guys in Texas and Florida that do it, but that's really it. We're very much so pushing to acquire what we call institutional assets, right? Because a hotel doesn't trade at a cap rate,
Right.
whereas the apartment building trades at a cap rate. And I think the reason a hotel doesn't trade at a cap rate is because of the stigma and the fact that 70% of hotels in the US are owned by non-whites, you know? They don't call it institutional product. And I think that's why we need to get into those institutions. But tell
And
me this, what would you do um today and what would you say to young boys and girls, probably especially girls? I have 3 daughters who are 12, 8, and 2. What would you say to them as they're growing up, getting older, and want to be entrepreneurs?
I would say there is no job that you shouldn't do that's beneath you. Start on the bottom. I think our success story as Indians, even especially if I was to just say women, there's no job our mom didn't do. When they were cleaning rooms, they'd clean, even the dad. Let's just not just say moms. So I believe experience is key. You cannot graduate college and say, I want to be a CEO of a company.
Yeah. Start by
When,
cleaning the bathrooms,
you
I
know, uh,
remember doing it.
start at home, do everything and anything, be humble. When I was in high school, I worked at Walmart. And I always said this to my kids, actually, and I still do. When I how can you, who can you network with that can take you to the next level? The only reason I got that job at Walmart, Greg, is
Mhm.
because my friend's mom was the manager and of that Walmart. And I took it to my advantage. I said, "Yes, I am going to work here because Diana, who's my friend, her mom's the manager." And I always felt that was important. Even today for my kids, I say to my son, he's doing his MBA at University of Michigan, and I said to him, "While you're at Ross Business School, honey, every other weekend, but today he was driving, and I gave him a little advice, and I said, make sure you continue making your networking contacts because you never know who you could reach out to 10 years from now. Even as teenagers, be a kid, have fun, but also create a network."
100%. It's not what you know, it's who you know. Simple enough.
Uh, I knew Dan, sorry, my boss. He used to read. That's why I'm at 513 Capital. And it is who you know. Also, it's what you know, and a college degree is very important. Is it a must? Um, I think it is. It polishes you. I think what we struggled with, Greg, the reason we couldn't walk into banks or we weren't polished. My
Yeah.
dad didn't have he didn't know how to use an Excel sheet. And, he went to agriculture college in India, but that wasn't enough. So I do believe in being polished, being professional. It works today. And also for the kids that are growing up, teenagers, get involved in sports. Sports teaches you a lot. It teaches you to be a team player.
And how to work with other people. That's huge, right? You
Yes.
gotta be amicable and be able to work with other people.
And you have to learn to bite your tongue. Not everything is, your way. So there's, so many. And I actually, I do on a daily basis. I talk to my kids, whether it's text or calling them. And, I also allow them to teach me something. And we're never too young, we're never too old to learn. And I want to say this to all the women out there. I hope there's many women that do listen. Your 50s, it can be your prime years. It can be. You've come a long way. Your kids are finally where they need to be on their way. Now it's you. Now it's your time. Do what you've always wanted to do. That 20-year-old person can now be the person that, they need to be today.
No, that's Jay-Z said it best, 50 is the new 30, right? No, he's
Ah.
50 plus, so is Beyonce. Um, but
Aw, thank
thank
you.
you for coming on the pod. I really appreciate you being on. It's been a great episode. Thank you, everybody. Do you wanna give a shout out to 513, the website, how people can contact you?
Sure, I do want to give a shout out. My boss is amazing. I mean, we're like a boutique finance broker. We, always say boutique because we customize to based on what you're looking for. Maybe we're a fit, maybe we're not a fit. Give us a call, 513 Capital. We're based out of Cincinnati. I'm from Dayton, Ohio. You can reach out to me, call me. We consult, we don't charge. We only get paid when the deal is done. And we want the deal to get done. So, it's I appreciate the time you gave me to talk about myself and this has been wonderful. This was a lot of fun.
I'm glad. This was great.
It
Great
was so much
episode.
fun. Greg.
Thank
Awesome,
you for
Greg.
coming on. It's been fun. On, it's been fun. On, it's been fun. On, it's been fun. On, it's been fun.